Hello, it's Charlotte Sister C. Farrell, host of Powered by Age, Canada's longest-running senior-led podcast that invites you to do what you love.
This podcast is for you if you love writing or telling stories, if you love sharing poetry or doing interviews.
This podcast is for you if you love working on ways to create age-friendly cities.
This podcast is for you if you love learning how to tame technology and get more out of virtual events, if you love finding more ways to share your heritage or traditions.
If you love any of these things, you can go beyond listening and join our weekly podcast group. Simply email pbaafc@gmail.com and put your name in the subject line. Powered by Age is sponsored by the Government of Canada, New Horizons Grant, the 411 Senior Center Society, and G&F Financial Group. Good afternoon and welcome to Powered by Age, Canada's longest running Powered by Age, Powered by Seniors program. Today we are continuing our celebration of Women's History Month, Break the Bias. We're doing Breaking the Bias against embracing holistic health as a valuable form of health. We have two special guests today. One is going to increase your sense about sense, and the other is going to use a healing poem to talk about healing through poetry. So I am Charlotte Farrell, the host. I acknowledge that our work takes place on the unceded properties of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish people. We stand with them in knowing that a reconciliation will come within our lifetimes. What we usually do at the beginning is have people that are here just briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll go on to introducing our special guest and hearing the presentations that they have for us. So I'm going just across the way my top line is and say, Prafula.
Hi, my name is Prafula Vyas and I live in Milton, and I'm really enjoying this group, and I'm so glad that I joined it because there are so many different interesting topics that keep coming up. And also I get so much encouragement to write stories and also to listen to really nice poems as well. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. Chris?
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Morrissey, and I'm happy to be back. I've had appointments. A year or so ago, I had an amputation of my right leg. So I've been going through a lot of appointments, and they just happened to fall on Thursdays in the afternoon. So I'm really happy to be back, and it's nice to see so many familiar faces and new faces as well. So thank you.
Happy to have you back. We missed you. Neil?
Yeah, my name is Neil Ryan. I'm a retired businessman who became a poet, and I write poems quite frequently, and I have one for today, later, if we have time. And basically, I'm a happy camper senior.
Happy camper adventurer. Delsa?
My name is Delsa. I come all the way from Mississauga. I am into yoga and meditation, and also into everything that is holistic. Holistic nutrition, holistic healing. I am into it. So I am so glad to be joining this group today. Thank you.
Girl, you're in the right place. Leslie?
Yes, I'm Leslie Hebert, normally from New Westminster, just outside of Vancouver, but I am coming to you today from sunny Arizona.
Oh,
Nice.
must be nice there. Must be warm, right?
Yeah, it's in the 80s.
Wow.
And sunny. It's always sunny in the desert. Right?
I couldn't get out because I am only 60 kilograms. I'm gonna be blown by the wind here.
Oh boy!
After this morning, yeah, it's just too windy.
Willeen?
Hello, everyone. I am Willeen Watson, and I am a writer of daily affirmative thoughts for a church Hillside International, and I am a religious science practitioner and emeritus, or I've been that for 30 years now, and that's me in a nutshell right now.
Well,
I don't know what we're doing today, but I figured I'd get on the call anyway.
well, we welcome you. And almost everyone that's within our group, it sometimes has a point that they make a presentation. Willeen writes a lot about forgiveness and does workshops and counseling on forgiveness, and has a shirt which I need to wear often because it says still and steady. Dell?
Hi, my name is Dell. I live on the Sunshine Coast. I am related to two people here. One, my sister, Ramona, and two is Rohana, our presenter. We've been in writing groups together, and I've been on this group before and really liked it. And I'm just waiting until some other things ease up for me and I can attend more regularly because I really like the group. So thank you.
Oh, welcome. And now we hear Ramona, who's connected to two people.
Hi, everyone. It's really great and such a surprise to have these, people joining us from Mississauga, Delsa and Prafula, and my sister from the Sunshine Coast. And of course, looking forward to listening to holistic healing from Rohana. And I'm sorry, the other name escapes me.
Yoshimi.
Okay. So hopefully at the end we would wind up with listening to an exciting poem by Neil once again. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so now I'm going to introduce our two presenters, and we're going to increase your sense about scent with Rohanna Goodwin-Smith. She had an excellent career as an RN, but pursued her sense of importance in learning more about scents. She acquired clarity by certifying in alternative health modalities, touch modalities, but she found that she loved aromatherapy and has done everything from studying the history to being now a history-making author of this beautiful new book, Heart and Soul.
Nice.
Yeah. And she will be speaking with us first, but I'll also give an introduction to Mary Yoshiri Nakano. She was introduced to someone else who works with the 411 Center, Judy Lynn, who teaches Jane. We have two people that do ukulele, and Jane told her about the podcast we have on Saturdays and about Powered by Age. So she shared a poem on healing, and in talking about the healing, we'll hear of how her career as a licensed practical nurse for 16 years, mostly in pediatrics, just got to a point where she wanted to make a change, and she had a desire to produce different results through natural healing. And she went through many years of study, which involved her doing shiatsu, various oriental therapies, many Western modalities, such as Swedish style massage. And she has two things in common with Rohana, and that she has also done reflexology and aromatherapy. So we're going to have an interesting ride as we hear both presentations. Periodically, I'll give people an opportunity to ask a question, to make a comment, but we'll ask you as you make comments or questions to make them short because we have a lot of good information to share. So, Rohana, welcome.
Thank you, Charlotte, for inviting me to be with all of you today. And I'm sorry, is it Shuma? The other woman giving the presentation?
Yoshimi.
Yoshimi and I have more than reflexology in common, and we also both worked in pediatrics. Did you work in pediatrics?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we have lots in common. So I look forward to your presentation. One aspect of the aging process that I've come to appreciate recently is how I continue to learn about myself. And possibly this has something to do with the fact that our long-term memory becomes more acute as we get older. So as I was preparing this presentation, I realized how long in my life I've been, maybe not necessarily a warrior, but a defender or an advocate for one cause or another, and particularly in the area of healthcare. I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada, and in looking back at my childhood in the 1940s and 50s, I realized that my parents, they were generally pretty, we're Canadians, you know, they were generally pretty conservative and straight-laced, but I've come to think of them as kind of the early New Agers. For example, when I was ill, I would have my, like a lot of us, would have my chest covered with Vicks Vapor Rub by my mother, and it's very interesting because I've done a healing therapy using the sense of smell, and more on the psychological level, and it's amazing how many of my clients expressed, especially with the smell of camphor, how they expressed loving memories of their mothers putting a Vicks Vapor Rub on their chest. So very rarely was there a negative memory of that. So I found that kind of interesting. But anyhow, I also had mustard plasters wrapped around my neck and not put on my chest. And if I had a fever, it was cooled down with cooling compresses. And also, my mother brought in an osteopath. So I have very fond memories of lying on my bed. I mean, I don't remember being sick in particular, but lying on my bed, and this lovely, kindly woman sitting there, kind of palpating my chest and my back and my neck, and doing her therapy. So that's a very positive memory for me. I have no recollection of ever taking a medication, not even an aspirin, as a child. And even my parents, the only thing I recall my parents ever taking was my dad had a bit of an angry stomach, so he'd take an Alka-Seltzer once in a while. And I used to love that plop and fizz as he dropped the Alka-Seltzer into the and I'd take a little sip too from his glass. But so my sister and I, I don't recall ever being in a doctor's office or in a hospital. But that era was prior to the big pharma, the big pharmaceutical giants kind of commandeering the medical, healthcare systems across North America. And it was also prior to the spraying of toxic pesticides, not simply across all of our farmlands, and it's still going on today, but also even in our communities, even in our grass. I'm talking about Roundup, which is has glyphosate, and so there's more and more the thought, understanding today that much of our chronic illness, and 50% of both adults and children presently have a chronic illness, have at least one chronic illness. 50%. It was never like that up until the last maybe 20 or 30 years or so. So anyhow, with my beginning in this kind of unorthodox healthcare at home, I find it curious that I went on to pursue a career in nursing. But there wasn't as much choice for women in those days. However, in retrospect, I'm very grateful that I took that path because of many of the other areas that it's led me to, and it's also given me some credibility. Shortly after I became an RN in Toronto in the late 60s, I escaped with a friend, and we flew down to California, ended out in LA, and we both got jobs at Cedars of Lebanon, now Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Hollywood, which was fun to write home about. And I just flourished being on the cusp of the New Age movement, the holistic health movement. It was just a very joyous time and free. So I felt so much freer down there. Excuse me, I do have to use notes. I'm not very good at talking from the top of my head here. Most of my experience was in the field of pediatrics, but I became uncomfortable after a while because of the invasive procedures and the heavy duty pharmaceuticals that I had to administer to these wee babies and children. And so I had moved up to San Francisco, and at that time, Kaiser Permanente Hospital was instigating a new, it was called Mother-Infant Recovery Program, where the mothers who came in to have babies never left, they were never separated from their babies. They were in labor, then they had birth, and then they recovered together and went to their rooms together. So I loved that work. And that, kind of takes me into the mid 80s, and I contracted or developed chronic fatigue syndrome. And that at that time, chronic fatigue syndrome in the mid 80s was suddenly kind of huge. It was sort of an explosion, and nobody knew that much about it. But it did affect women in particularly, and a lot of nurses and teachers were affected. So I stopped nursing, and with a lot of soul searching of where do I go next, I chose a more alternative and a more creative health lifestyle. I knew I had to start giving a little attention to my creative side. I did birth my second child at home. I took my children to homeopaths and naturopaths when they were ill, which was very rare. And also I found that just doing massage, I didn't know reflexology then, but just rubbing their feet or a nice little back massage. So, and then, they could relax, or anyone that you relax a little bit, and then the immune system can click in. And so I definitely found that was beneficial. Over the years, when I attempted to share my alternative leanings with my medical colleagues, it was usually, they kind of put up with me. They kind of tolerated me. But I usually was met with a little bit of disdain and looked at as if I was coming from left field somehow. And I found it very disappointing that I didn't make many converts. I found it very disappointing that no one showed much interest in other approaches to health, and that offered more gentle and less toxic interventions. Then in my in the 1990s, the mid 1990s, in my early 50s, my life took an unexpected turn. I happened to be in a health food store. Now I'm in Vancouver. You can tell I've kind of moved along in my life. I was in Vancouver, and I happened to take a whiff of a little bit of lavender essential oil from a little brown bottle on a health food store shelf. And it just blew me away. I had it was like an olfactory, a smell epiphany. And the sniff was my first introduction to aromatherapy. And I was drawn to it. I've always loved beautiful scents, and I was drawn to it like a bee is to nectar. It was just immediate. Possibly my appreciation of beautiful smells comes from the fact that my father was a baker, so I spent a lot of time in his bake shop amongst the wonderful aromas of his his apple pies and cinnamon buns and so on and so forth. So I found my niche, and I immersed myself in the study of scent and healing as if it was a calling. And it truly did feel like a calling, and just sort of that's assurance that at any time in our lives we can still find our calling, even if we're, I don't know, 90, Before arriving in North America, aromatherapy was growing rapidly in Europe. And even medical doctors in France were writing prescriptions for essential oils for their patients. And by the time it arrived in North America, in maybe the late 80s, early 90s, even the nurses in England were actually taking essential oils into the hospital setting. So we were a little behind here. Shortly after that initial whiff of lavender, which is considered the Swiss Army knife of essential oils because it has so many healing benefits. Anyhow, shortly after that whiff, I happened to find a little ad in the paper for an aromatherapy course, which I signed up for immediately, studied hard, and became what we called at the time a registered aromatherapist. A registered aroma massage therapist actually was the designation. And I studied reflexology as well on the side, because most in England at that time, most of the nurses who were aromatherapists also did reflexology. However, alas, I have here once again, so I hung up my shingle expecting to save the world with my newfound wonderful therapy, and I came up against bias again. Aromatherapy is the only therapy that uses a sense of smell for health and healing reasons, and I get it, that it's understandable that it was hard for people to kind of get their heads around the fact. I mean, they were used to bad smells, maybe bad smells in hospitals or bad smells meant illness, but they certainly weren't used to the fact that smells could be healing, other than making perfumes and making you feel good. So there again, when I proudly announced that I was an aromatherapist, even my friends and family looked at me askance, like, oh, here she goes on another tangent. Charlotte, I in your introduction, I on the page, I noticed that you said that I've broken a barrel of biases. Well, I haven't broken all the biases yet, but I certainly work hard on doing so. North Americans warmed slowly to the fact that aromatic plants had therapeutic benefits. And not only on the physical level, but on the mental and the emotional and and the spiritual level. However, the public's slow acceptance of this therapy needn't have been a surprise for me, because the sense of smell itself has a bias, suffers from bias. As human beings, we've lost sight of the fact that throughout humanity's history, we've depended on not just the plants and healing plant matter of the earth, but also the aromas of the natural world. And we actually have an intimate connection with many of these aromas in our deep psychology. Unfortunately, smell had fallen from grace when the Enlightenment arrived in the Western world, and also known as the Age of Reason. That was in the 17th century. And scientists and philosophers alike disparaged the sense of smell. They considered it to be vulgar, base, of little importance. And in fact, heaven forbid, it might excite the emotions. That was something they didn't seem to want to deal with. Therefore, smell plummeted and to the bottom of the hierarchy of the senses for 3 centuries. As the bias continues, for example, when most people are asked which of the 5 senses, sight, sound, smell, taste, and or touch, that they would relinquish if pressured, or if they had to, which would they relinquish? And the majority of people will choose smell, followed by touch, taste, sound, and sight. And so it was another decade and well into the new millennium before aromatherapy was given recognition and respect. And just to go back a bit, it's interesting because the majority of people that would, and I can understand this, smell, we think we could give that up, but smell and taste are, if you lose your sense of smell, you lose your sense of taste. So therefore, if you give up the sense of smell, you're actually giving up 2 of your senses. And as we learned with the pandemic, aromatherapy has become mainstream by now, but with countless numbers of people during the pandemic losing their sense of smell, it actually caused a huge resurgence in the interest in the sense of smell. People that had it were desperate. They were meeting up online with other people that were suffering from the same thing, because across the world on social media, because they were all experiencing, without their sense of smell, a disconnection. They experienced angst, anger, and depression. So there was a New York Times podcast in January of 2021 called The Forgotten Sense. And I just want to read a quote from that podcast. And it said that COVID-19 arrived in a world that had spent far too long not taking the sense of smell seriously. So hooray, we're getting more attention. And obviously, as you can tell, I take it pretty seriously. For 25 years, I've been rooted in my dedication to this beautiful healing modality. And in fact, 7 years ago, I without any expectation, so it was a surprise to me. At the age of 70, I was compelled to write a book about my experiences in the field of aroma and healing. And So thank you. I'm going to hold it up again, but so it's called Scent and Soul: The Extraordinary Power of the Sense of Smell. And it's my hope that all who read it will become re-enchanted. That's what I ask people to become re-enchanted with not only their sense of smell, but also with the plants and aromas that Mother Nature has so generously and graciously provided us with. That's my conclusion.
Oh, I enjoyed your story, and I can relate to so much of what you said. I couldn't believe how similar.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
The biases and all of that. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I've had a similar journey. I'm certified EFT, I'm certified Reiki, I'm certified the reconnection, and I'm right now in the middle of doing a thing called intention healing. And I'm up to my eyebrows with schoolwork around.
Wow.
But in the meantime, I write poetry.
I've never heard, Neil, I've never heard intention healing. What is that about? You said intention healing.
Yes.
What is it, Neil? I've never heard it.
I don't want to take up the time, but Delsa, it's about creating the intention to heal and then meditating on it from the heart space.
All right. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. I just not sure that there's really a name to it.
Yeah, I have a question for Rohana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that, if people lack certain senses, so, if you don't have the sense of sight, it changes the way you have to navigate the world. And I remember as a child, a friend of my mother's was born without a sense of smell. And I was just wondering how that might have impacted her life.
Good question.
Yeah, and how she would.
How does she apply this scent and soul healing? Yeah. How do you apply it with not only with the lack of sense of smell, with the declining? When you get older, we lose senses.
Yeah.
Right? We lose sense. We lose sense of taste, sense of thirst. We don't get thirsty anymore. We don't get hungry anymore. The smell is slowly declining. How do they make use of the scent healing? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's it's pretty rare, extremely rare to be born without a sense of smell, and so I just can't imagine. I mean, we don't miss. In my book, I talk about people that lose their sense of smell, and maybe possibly that woman, maybe she fell. Lots of babies fall out of their mother's arms or fall off tables and so forth, and maybe she hit her head. And
yeah, I don't know how it happened.
It's really, really hard to know, and so I'd be curious to know. And often parents aren't aware of a child until they're teenagers that they've lost their sense of smell, because until maybe the toast is burning or something, or they miss that. But so I would be curious to know how her life was. Do you know anything about how?
Well, she was a friend of my mom. She was married. She had a child, but she just let us know. I'm sorry, I can't smell that. I have no sense of smell.
Right. Yeah. So I think we could certainly. We need it for protection. Certainly, we're aware of gas, coming through or whatever. But she would never know of the pleasure and the. So I would think on some level there would be something missing that she.
I think it has something to do with centers in the brain that controls everything. Yeah, part of the brain is probably impaired that controls the sense of smell. Yeah.
These questions relate to another kind of bias or limitation. Much of the medicine practice in the United States now is not following the oath of Hippocrates, which is the physician counseling their patient, but also doing a homeopathy. Homeopathy was the medicine that was used. It is the standard main medicine for France, but it was to really examine the body, to ask people questions about, does it feel, you feel different in a cold breeze? Do you feel better sleeping on your left side? It really gets more invasive in the questions to get a picture, because there certain remedies have got a picture. There's a thing within nature that represents or reflects the symptoms people have. And when a person has a homeopathic evaluation, it would get more to what might be the cause of what might be a remedy. So
yeah, I'm a fan of homeopathy, that's for sure. Although I actually had to give up homeopathy because it can be antidote by strong, and while I was into aromatherapy until fairly recently, because strong smells can antidote, particular smells can antidote remedies, but my homeopath at present isn't concerned about that. She'll just give me another dose of the remedy. But just on an aside, I just learned recently that homeopathy was originally taken through smell or through the nose or something. I didn't realize that, so I'm not sure what that means. But
and also, Rohanna, with the people, there's a lot of allergies in this country. Like, the oils and the aromatherapy, they got very intense smell, and if you're allergic to it,
that's a whole other That's a whole other thing. If you're allergic to roses or you're allergic to oranges,
jasmine, yes,
you need to stay away from
the barks. Yeah.
Okay, we are going to be continuing on this discussion over different weeks, but we're going to hear from Yoshimi. She was a licensed practical nurse for 16 years, working mostly in pediatrics, as she said. But one different way we're going to introduce her is through a poem. She wrote a poem called Healing, and this poem reflects both some of the bias, but also the way that it was a healing form for her. So, Yoshimi?
Well, I before I read my poem, of all of the modalities that I learned, I wanted to preface it by saying I'm 77 now, and I was an LPN, and I decided that I wanted to learn alternative natural healing. And so when I quit my job at the hospital, there was huge protesting from my parents. I'm third generation Japanese Canadian. They thought that here I was giving up a fairly lucrative long-term profession where I could retire with a pension. And here I gave it all up to do something that I didn't have any idea where I was going, but it was a long journey, but a thoroughly engrossing, wonderful adventure in learning so many different modalities, Oriental, and where I, like doing heavy duty physical shiatsu on the floor, to all of this, so many other different treatment things, to doing it. And in my later years, before I retired at 69, where I was doing more subtle energetic work, more just kind of trying to get to the place where to have my clients or anybody I touched to so that they got in touch with their own innate healing through sensations and just letting go through breath work, all of these different natural modalities. And I'm quite sensitive with the kinesthetic sense. I love touch, I love contact, I love hugging, I love anything to do with touch. And it's such a wonderful, gentle way to connect with people and to share. And so refining my skills and everything took many years. And so I learned to come to a place of humility, I think, in that I didn't have all the answers. I couldn't save anybody. I couldn't take away. I wasn't the perfect a model of health and wellness or free of any kind of challenges or personal or whatever. So that's kind of, and then the other bias was when I was going into learning all of these and then stumbling along, a lot of people, especially my father, was very against what I did because he thought that I would be working in a massage parlor or a body rub place. Like there would be, kind of silly jokes with people, especially men that would kind of make it sound like I was some kind of, the Western idea of, or the belief system of geishas or I don't know, kind of like the quiet, sweet Japanese kind of woman. Anyway, so there was a lot of things that where I learned a lot about really grounding myself in what I felt led to do. So here's my poem. It's called Healing Work. My father never approved of my line of work. No daughter of his would work in such a low-class job. In his day, doing amma was a shameful thing. But I'm not one of them, I'd protest. He'd walk away. Who would come to you anyway? But they did come, eager for healing all manner of injuries, ailments of body, mind, and spirit. I had found my calling. With tools of the trade, a roll-up mat, on-site massage chair, a folding table, they took me from clinic treatment rooms to health fairs, hospice bedsides, executive boardrooms, film sets, to homes of the rich and famous, to suites at the Sylvia Hotel. Years of Eastern esoteric studies, thumbs applied to tsubos, meridians to balance chi, Western traditions, effleurage, subtle energetics to move fluids, integrating neuromuscular systems. At their essence is trust in my mind, in my heart, mind, and hands. My work is to assess the terrain of each body, listen to their tissues, feel for the felt sense of a blockage for release, and trust in the wisdom of the body to do the healing. My father had never approved of my line of work, and yet here he is before me on the table. I have seen his woundedness too often, his wretched body in a heap on the floor, sobbing inconsolably after a regretted rampage. My palms form a bowl. He lets me nestle his head in them for a brief moment. He closes his eyes. Gently I stroke the contours of his face, over the furrowed brow, from which I often gauged his mood, alert for the wild eyes and what might ensue, over the deep ruts surrounding his downturned mouth. I unclench and soften his gnarled fingers from the customary fists, these pugilistic weapons that have wreaked terror and tumult this many years. My fingers coax softening from the armor of his caged chest. He shudders. A sigh escapes, followed by a deeper exhalation, begging release from the belly. I feel tingling, a current, streaming through my hands from his body into mine. Our synchronized breathing becomes a shared resonance of stillness, which spreads out like a wave, out with the tide, gathering all the streams and tributaries, spreading beyond our bodies, out of the room to the larger void, the ocean, activating the vestiges of the primitive embryonic fluids of his mother's womb and beyond. We stay together, sharing the stillness, the ebb and flow for the longest time. A tear escapes from beneath his closed lids. I turn my head to save face, but there's no face to save.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Is that an autobiography turned into a poetry, Neil?
Mm-hmm. That is, it does that. I've never seen a poem that so much talked about your profession, talked about your transition, but also the pain of not being accepted by a parent, but then at the end, the reconciliation and love as you were treating him. It's an amazing poem.
Thank you.
Truly, truly.
Yoshimi, remember last time we were together here, I asked you to say the words, "I am a poet."
Yes, I remember.
You are a poet.
I really liked your last line. There was no face. So were you trying to refer to the fact that your dad was feeling guilty about the way he had treated you in the beginning and the way he had looked at that profession? Like had he lost face in that sense? Like I wasn't sure what that last line meant.
Well, it's kind of symbolizes a lot of things about saving face, and especially with older, maybe Oriental fathers who are quite dominant and not, it was like, I'm the master of the house and whatever. But I always wanted to connect with my father over the years, and he always loved and asked for massages. You know, it's very common to, like, I would give my grandmother, my parents, little massages when I was 10 and 12 and, over the years and everything. And so this was, and the thing is that I didn't want him to feel guilt, or I didn't want to feel, or shame, or I didn't want to feel guilt or shame in what I did or how I lived my life and my journey. So it was like a symbolic of everything, about releasing and forgiving. And touch can do that wordlessly, and I loved all my clients. I loved the work and all of the challenges of learning and all the different treatment modalities, having a rapport with my long-established kind of clients, and then meeting new ones, and just being able to share our mutual journeys. We all have a journey, and in learning, and with all of the learning and my experiences in the field and all my books on anatomy and physiology and everything, it all comes down to trusting and having faith in our own abilities, in supporting and cultivating, nurturing the healing within us through lifestyle changes, through activities, connecting with people. Just so it's the whole ball of wax. I think it's just coming down to really and discovering the quiet, silent part of us and communing with that healing part of us, and in all of the whole realm.
I never knew how my parents' skin felt like. I wish I have known how to massage when I was 10 years old like you did. So I had every good reason to touch them. Because in Asian culture, we don't touching, and you know it, right? Touching is never a part of growing up. I grew up in the 50s and 60s like Rohana, and now that you talk about it, I wish I could have touched my parents. I wish I could be like, I learned massage in this country. I wish I knew how to massage when I was 10 like you. Gave me a very good reason to touch them, especially my father.
Charlotte, I'm going to request, I have a very short poem I'd like to share because it's very appropriate to what we've heard today from Rohana and from Yoshimi, and it's called I Am Tomorrow. I am tomorrow from the foods that I eat today, not just the healthy foods, but the ones that please me as well. I am tomorrow by the emotions I experience today, not just the pleasant ones that please me, but all of them, both the ups and the downs. I am tomorrow by the thoughts I think today. My thoughts create the body's chemistry that motivate and generate my actions and my health. I am tomorrow by the words I speak today, so I get teased, even rebuked for saying I am always good. I am tomorrow by the karma, both good and bad, that I create today. So the hippies of the 70s were right. What goes around comes around. I am tomorrow from the beliefs I hold as true. Even if no longer true, beliefs learned in childhood are the most difficult to change. I am tomorrow from the stories that I cling to about the past. Every memory is a chance to invent a better tomorrow by choosing ones of love. I am tomorrow from the gratitude I have when I realize how blessed I am. I have someone to love. I am loved by someone, and I am grateful that I live the life that I live today. I am tomorrow today.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Lovely poem.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Lovely. One of the best yet.
Yeah. Good connecting point between the experiences that have been shared today. I want to really thank you, Rohana and Yoshimi, for coming, for sharing just the beauty of pursuing what you loved. And I think something that connects with each of us, a dream deferred. Many people have had something that other people told them they needed to do in order to be accepted. But then in midlife, 60s, 70s, I have in common with the two of you, mid-70s, I started doing something different. And so I hope our listeners will be encouraged to know if you're following a path that you're not happy with, reach out and look at where it is. Is it in the healing arts? Is it in the creative arts? Be bold enough to say, that's what I was brought here to do. Just as these, each of our speakers and very much the other participants that we have within Powered by Age, people doing what they want to do, sharing things that will make the world a better place, doing things that will help reach our objective of AFC, create the age-friendly, not only city, but age-friendly country. Next week, we're going to be celebrating our 100th. We're going to be 100 years old. And so people might write something on, when I am 100, I will, we're going to have some proclamations, and I'm not sure whether I have it in speaker view, but Quirky is an organization that's going to do a reading. We're going to have some special singing. So just come and join us next week at 1 and hear how Powered by Age is here for you and has been for 100 episodes.
Thank you, Charlotte, for another beautiful
Thank you so
Powered
much.
by Age.
Great session. And nice to see you again, Chris.
Nice to see you too.
Thank you all for being the power behind Powered by Age. So.
Yeah, a beautiful writer, Chris. Beautiful writer.
And smell the roses, guys. Just go out.
Yes.
Roses. That's okay.
Yes, Rohanna. Me, lavender.
Lavender.
Thank you.
Yeah.